Hi.
Good morning, Saul. Pat?
Morning, Stan.
Hi, Stan. Saul,
Yes.
I might have to get up and leave, but I'll leave my non-photo here. And the plan for this morning is Ross will talk. So all you need to do is give him the floor at about 10:35.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm recording it just in case you got bumped off anyway.
I'm going to leave my picture off because I noticed that somebody last week was getting bumped off or was getting screwed up audio wise, and then they got rid of their picture and it improved.
Yeah, that was Ross.
Yeah. So I'm going to just leave my avatar up there, or AppSug's avatar, without my picture today. So you won't know when I get up and leave. I'll just maybe I'll say something.
But you plan to still be at the meeting toward the end of it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask about share screen?
What
It
about
is
screen?
it is enabled, Stan.
Not on mine. I don't see the green button at the bottom.
You should. It says allow participants to share screen, and it's checked.
Stan, do you have other panes open in Zoom? Because they tend to squish up that control bar, the Zoom control bar, and they hide icons when they don't have enough room to display them all.
Do you have a, Ross or Stan, do you have a more on the far right just before the end?
No,
It's just when you have things like the participants pane, the chat pane, other panes open on the same screen, they tend to squish up that bar because they're taking up extra real estate.
well, I had participants window open. I've since closed that. I do not have captions open on this transcript open, but I do have the closed caption window. I'll hide that. It's still, I do not have a green button for share screen.
Would you read the things at the bottom of your screen, starting at the left where it says where you have the microphone and then the video?
I have mute, stop video, and then a space, then participants, chat, record, show captions and reactions, and on the far right, leave.
Fascinating.
You're missing apps and share screen on my computer.
If I can interrupt a moment here, somebody else is trying to come in by their phone and they would like to know if Hank has the passcode, which they will need to join by phone. This is Rowena from Wesley Palms.
Yep, I do. I have to go get it. So,
If you could post that in the chat, she'll be able to see it.
yep. As soon as I find it.
I'll tell it to you. 0, 7, 4, 9, 4, 5.
Does the person who needs it, did the person who needs it hear that? Or
Can you type in the chat, please? I
Yeah,
think I missed a number. Thank you.
hold on.
Since the person that needs it is not online, I guess they can't see it.
Okay, hold on. To everyone in the meeting. What is it again? I think that
The
would be okay.
numbers are 0, 7, 4, 9, 4, 5. But the person that needs it is not in the meeting, so she can't see it.
Okay,
You
how,
need to send her an email or something.
who asked, who,
She can hear
Was it-
you, I think.
was
I
it
got
you?
it. Thank you so much. I have it on the big screen now. Thank you.
Okay,
And I just posted it in the chat.
We have WP main conference room.
That is Wesley Palms.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we're showing it in the conference room here. There's no one here yet, but for anyone that's interested, we want to offer this to the residents.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
hello, Ross. You're the main man today.
Stan, did you ever get your share screen to show up?
No. And I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So,
Here I am. Okay. Let's see.
okay.
The person in Wesley Palms, what is your name?
My name is Rowena.
Rowena? Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, so our residents have a lot of technical issues and assistance. So we felt that, instead of having them contact you guys and getting that Zoom information, we thought that maybe if we show it here, that maybe they'll show up and then bring their questions. But this is the first time that we're showing it here at the conference room. So I don't know who's going to show up, but I'm just going to leave it open for anyone that is interested. So I'll just leave it on and then I'll come back and turn off later.
Well,
Yeah, good.
let me make sure you understand how our system works.
Okay.
We, every Saturday, we have some kind of a presentation. This morning,
Okay.
we have one of our members who's going to talk for quite a while on the subject of passwords, how you save them and how you don't lose them and other things about that.
Okay.
It lasts for, anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour. And then at the end of that, we almost always have a question and answer session. And that's the time when people who have a problem could bring it up from your conference room, as long as we can hear them. And we hope that would be useful to them.
Okay. That sounds good.
So if you could kind of, I imagine you may have people who show up there in the next 15, 20 minutes. So if you could tell them that so that they don't interrupt our presenter this morning, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. I don't know how long I can stay here. But
Well,
and
you
again,
could-
it's,
if you
I'm
could
not.
stay until about 1:45, where are we? 8:30, 10. I'm in Hawaii, so I've got a time zone.
Okay.
A quarter to 11, maybe.
Okay. Well, I have to go do something right now, but I'll come back and check and see if anybody else comes. Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
And,
Thank you
and,
so much.
and Rowena,
Yes.
I just want to say we're going to mute the microphone so it doesn't interrupt the other people talking here. So just be aware if you come back, you'll need to unmute if somebody wants to speak.
Okay. That sounds good. Thank you so much.
And they can they see everybody else? You have a
Yes, they can see everybody else.
Just like you.
I'm just waiting for Rowena to
No,
confirm.
I muted her, so you're not
Oh.
going to listen to her.
Okay.
Her setup is just like yours, sir.
Figured as much, but
We often have Sammy Olnick show up from Wesley Palms, but she hasn't been on for several weeks.
Sharon says in the chat that she notices the info in this chat is only for or from, I'm not sure which, PCs, question mark. Who knows? Ross?
So yes, this is more PC centric than it is for Mac centric. But when we talk about passwords, it will be for both.
Thank you.
Which is what I just posted in the chat.
Excuse me.
Just curious, is there a reason that we wait so long to get started?
Yeah. I always wait until at least 5 minutes after our announced start time because people keep showing up.
I'm just curious because we already have 23, which is, or 22, which is more than we normally have anyhow.
Yes, it is.
Anyway, that's fine.
And for any of those who recently arrived, Hank announced earlier that he may be stepping away during the meeting, but he'll be back before the end of the meeting.
Yep. I'm going to share my screen now. That's one of the things that caused me to get bumped off in times past. I'm just going to try that for a minute.
I'm going to drop out and come back in also.
Well, so far, so good.
Mr. Hank, I think also it had more to do with when you were trying to present a video.
Yeah. And I don't. Let me just take a little more time here to see if I can do that. I have some videos.
everything you've heard about these terms is likely skewed and why they are actually an extremely important part of the internet. Let's start with some definitions to get our discussion started. The deep web refers to
Next time, maybe we could have a cartoon.
What do you think this is?
Yep.
YouTube?
Yeah, cartoon is.
It's before the main presentation.
And we're up to 24 participants now. Ross, you're a popular guy. And it is
Time to start.
35 here. Go ahead, Ross.
Okay, so the items that I posted into the chat session are links to the various things that I was going to talk about today. Most of those are multi-step processes that are kind of complicated to follow. So to try to watch those in a YouTube video, I didn't think was a good thing to try to do, because people would have to take notes and try to understand and or go back and watch the video. So I posted the links to the things that I want to talk about. On your own, you should go through those items, and then you can ask questions now and or later to me to say, well, what does this particularly mean and how do I do that? So I'd like to get through the presentation before we start answering questions. So if you have a particular question, if I could get you to either put it in the chat and or write it down, so that when we come back to that area, and I'll go again back by area that I'm going to talk about, and then we can address those particular issues.
And I think I will try to post all of the links that you put in there, Ross, on our website so that people can go back there later after this session is over to watch
Right.
those.
Right.
So you don't need to copy them down now and flail around with them while Ross is talking. Let me mute everybody, or maybe, yeah, here we go. I'm muting everyone, which is probably Ross too, so you'll have to mute yourself.
Okay. All right, well, then I'm going to start. I work on computers every day of the week. I've been working with computers since the early 70s. And most of the time of what I'm doing of late is fixing problems that other people have. So that's the direction that I'm coming from, to say, you go to the dentist because my tooth hurts. And then he's going to say, well, you should have brushed, you should have flossed, you should have come in and had checkups so it wouldn't be so bad. And these are kind of the things that I'm talking about. Everybody has their own ways they like to do things, or say, I don't ever do that because I don't agree with it. And I understand that, except that you come to me later and say, well, I need to have help. And I say, did you? And you go, no, I didn't think I needed to have a password manager, as an example, because I'm going to remember the passwords. We don't remember the passwords. We have to change them. So that's where I'm coming from. So the number one on the list was password manager. It is strongly recommended that you use a password managing program in your computer. This CNET here has a list of the ones that they recommend. CNET's a company that's been around a long time, and I respect their opinions. The reason you want to have a password manager in the computer is because when you go into a website that says, oh, you changed your password, can we remember that? Or it's the first time you visited that website. Again, it will prompt you, can they remember that? And that's a good thing that they remember it and put that into their service that is backed up to the cloud. So if you have a problem with your computer and or need to sit at a different computer, you can log into that password manager and pull that information down. All the ones that I've worked with always have a provision also to print that list out. And if you say, I want to have it on a piece of paper, great, print it out and you have it there. I recommend that when people go to change their password, that they open up the notepad in the computer or in your word processing program. Then type your password in. Uppercase, lowercase, number, special character. And it's getting to the point where most of the places are recommending 15 characters or more. The more characters that are there, it's the number of times that they have to go through a test to see if they can break in on your account. What's in there is not as important, again, as the length of the password. But again, most places won't let you just put in there 15 ones. You have to do an uppercase, a lowercase, a number, and a special character in there. One way that you can do that is if you say you have a 8-character password that you like, that has all those things in it, then if you go in and re-enter that password, when you change in that account and you type it in your normal way, and the next time you type in the same 8 characters, you hold the shift key down. So that changes the case on each of them. And also, if it's a number, it changes it to a special character. Everybody says they want to have it so they can remember the passwords themselves without having to use the password manager. My memory isn't getting any better, and I'm ending up with more and more websites that I need to have the password remembered on. So again, I'm strongly recommend that you have a password manager that's there. I use LastPass and have for many years. And as of late, there's been a problem at LastPass where they were compromised. They are working to fix that compromise so that never happens again. What was lost from what I read are customers' vaults of the information, which was encrypted. So they may have some information from LastPass, but not the full thing. What they would need to do is take that account, say bankofamerica.com, run their program on there to see if they can break in on that Bank of America account. So again, the longer the password is, the more complicated it is, the more things they have to do to try to break in. And a lot of places are setting it up so that after so many tries from the same IP address, it locks you out. So it makes it difficult for someone to figure a password. I'm going to go through in my LastPass and change all the passwords using their password generation program. And again, I'm going to print that out so I have a copy of it here. On email passwords and Windows, I work with people at some retirement homes, and they have now moved from where they used to live. They no longer have the original email account. So it was Cox, and now they've moved into, say, Wesley Palms. It's going to be Roadrunner. So now when you say, whoops, I can't remember my password for Cox, and you go to Cox and say, please help me reset it, they go, you don't have an account with us. So you need to have that, review the passwords that you have and make sure that you have a service that will move with you. I like Gmail. Some people don't care for it because of some of their features, and that's fine. Some people want to use Outlook or Hotmail. That's fine. There's pluses and minuses with all of them. You need to Google for that and say, this is what I need to have. One of the guys that does a lot of security work in my computer group, he uses Proton Mail. What the advantages are, and if there's any costs involved, you'll have to go to protonmail.com and find that out. Wherever you can on an account, you need to enable two-factor authentication. Now, what that does is when you sit at a different computer, a different location, new phone, you have to go through whatever the second factor identification is. On my Gmail account, and I have a link there to say, this is how you do it in Gmail. Whenever I go to sign in, when I'm at a customer's office through their computer, I get a text message from Google. on my cell phone and it says, is this you? And then I go through their requirements there. Microsoft does the same thing with two-factor identification in Office 365. And they have an authenticator also. Microsoft has an authenticator, which is a program that you put onto your cell phone that when you go to log in on that site, it shows you a 6-digit number. 6 to 12-digit number, excuse me. And you have to type that number in, and it keeps updating every 30 seconds to a minute. So it's pretty tight on there. It makes it difficult for the bad guys. So if they have to generate a new password, try it on your account, go through what's required for the two-factor identification before it times out, it makes it infinitely harder for them to get in. Nothing is perfect. There are always ways around, and you will say, oh, I think this is the best service, the best program, the best company. And then you'll find out a year or two later that they have been compromised. Everybody's accounts have been compromised. FBI, CIA, whitehouse.gov, baseball.com, all those websites have been compromised. So you just have to be careful on what you're doing there and know what the ramifications are for that. For banking, if it's a personal account, then your personal account password has been compromised and they drain your account, the bank will give you your money back. If it's a stock account, no such deal. But that money is gone and transferred overseas, it's gone. So for stock accounts, I recommend people check with their provider or for their stockbroker to say, what can I do for two-factor authentications? Set it up where you have to call and give them a secret name, whatever it is they have, some other way that they can't just do everything through the web that's there. Okay, so the next thing, there's been controversy about the Microsoft stealing information or gathering information from you and using it to sell your data. That happens on just about every web page. If you use something like a search engine like DuckDuckGo, or you use some of the other browsers, it limits the amount of information that they sell. But you have to look and say, am I paying for this service? If you're not paying for that service, then that website needs to come up with some way to generate money. And if it's a legitimate company, they will say, okay, if you want to do this, it's going to cost you $19 a year or whatever it is. Beyond that, they have to come up with some way of either advertising to you and or gathering information from you about your system. Now, in the Microsoft areas, when people sign in on a new computer, Microsoft is pushing really, really, really hard for you to sign in using your Microsoft account. So once you log in, they know who you are, they know where you are, and they can watch your browsing and everything else that you do, that information that's there. You can sign in on a computer, which was called a local account. It takes a couple tricks and it's changing all the time. These links that I say, this is how you do that, it's going to change and it's going to be harder to do, but it's not impossible to do. You can say, I don't want to have an account log synchronized to Microsoft, which is what we do for all our business customers. And you sign in with an email, with a username and password that you can create. And at that point also, you create your password and save it. If you work with a Microsoft account and something gets haywire, you've lost access to that particular email address that you used to create this account. You no longer have that cell phone number or whatever it is that you use to set up that account. Microsoft can say, sorry, we don't know for sure who you are. So we're not going to release that account, let you reset the password up. They're going to say, sorry. And you have to then usually reformat the computer and reinstall, and hopefully you have a backup of all your information. I didn't mention it earlier, but please have an automated backup program that copies your information from your computer to somewhere else than at your home in your office. It needs to be somewhere else in case something happens there. Carbonite is the one that I use. There's a number of services out there that can do the same thing. The Microsoft OneDrive seems to be working well for that. And you can use Microsoft services on your computer that are using your Microsoft account, but it's not on the whole computer. So in other words, you don't log in with that and it's not seeing things. It's just using it for the OneDrive. And that's a way to get your information. Windows 10 is what most of us have. Windows 11 is fine. Windows 11 makes it harder to get into the area that you want to use for a Microsoft account, excuse me, a local account, but you can do it. But there is a difference between what is home and the professional versions of Office on the things that you have to do and the more hoops that you have to jump through to get that to work. Again, there's many steps that you have to go through, and if you don't do them, then it won't let you change, basically, if you don't do all the steps correctly. But I've gone through on many people's computers and said, yep, we had a Microsoft account. We're going to turn that part off. But you have to have your credentials for that Microsoft account to do that. And if you don't have the credentials for your email or Windows or whatever account, you need to go to Microsoft and or say Gmail and review your passwords that you have and your recovery options. And if you no longer have that cell phone or no longer live at that particular street address, or have that as a recovery email address, then you get locked out, because there's too many times that the bad guys have been able to trick the companies into saying, yeah, I'm a good guy. This is my account. I just forgot my password. And they go, too bad, you're on your own. I will mention also, same thing with LastPass. LastPass has a master password that you log in to your account online. If you forget that, that account is locked forever. They will not reset it. That's just a matter of policy. They don't want to unlock an account for somebody that they don't know for sure it's you. QuickBooks is doing the same thing with Intuit. You have to log in to be able to use your local copy of QuickBooks. QuickBooks would like you to have all their information at their server and make you log in every time to use it and that information on a subscription basis, of course. And if you stop paying for the subscription, they will lock up your data. So you have to be careful with the usernames and passwords. And again, a password manager to me is the best way to do it. Now, if you get locked out of your computer, or there's many other things that the safe mode can help you get into and change. I put a link in there to Microsoft. It involves turning your computer off and back on. And when you see the dot spinning 3 times, you turn it off, and then you come back up and it says, please wait. And then it will take you to the diagnostics mode, which is called safe mode. And there's all kinds of things and repairs that you can do what's called safe mode, which we used to use in XP and Windows 7 to get in and repair a computer that won't boot, or go in this case, to change the password. If you have a computer that's locked with, say, a Microsoft account, then going into safe mode and trying to get into the area that will let you make a change to that password, they won't do it. You have to boot from a memory stick that has Windows on there, like what I use to create new installs of Windows on a computer. And Microsoft has steps. Is okay, you go to this website, you click here, you do that, and they will make a memory stick for you that will have all full Windows 11 on that computer. And then you boot up that computer with that. Then you can go through the steps and get into the safe mode, and then you can change the password. Multiple steps So all these things I'm trying to help you so you don't get stuck, because it is complicated and very time consuming to get back out of those accounts and get those passwords reset. There's been controversy over Microsoft's telemetry, what information they take from you when you log in on the computer. Again, that's called their telemetry. And there's a link there that says this is how you can turn off telemetry in your computer. And that limits the amount of information Microsoft can get from you from that computer. In Windows 11, it's fairly straightforward, but I think Windows 11 also started gathering more information than 10 did. 10, it was difficult to turn that off, and you have to go into what's either called group policy or the registry edit. The registry is the piece of software that's in your computer that says, when I push this button, do that. So you have to go in there and say, this is where I want you to make a change and let me do that. Registry editing is not for the beginner. You have to be careful with that because you can confuse your computer where it won't start. But that gets back to the beginning when I mentioned that you really, really, really need to have a full backup of your computer. Be able to say, if this computer dies, if I get locked out, I can erase everything that's here, put in a new computer in place, and restore all of my information. I think that's basically it, is all the subjects that I wanted to address. And so then I guess I'm open for questions.
And those who have questions, unmute yourself. And put your hands up and we'll call individually.
Well, David McCall's there first on the list.
Yeah, David?
Yeah, Ross, one of the things that, I've noticed with my password manager, it's very good at asking me when I go to a new website. However, there's there's some programs where I'm not going to a website, just logging into the program, whether it's my email or my Microsoft account or something. Just make sure that people realize that they may have to put those into their password manager manually.
Right.
And that way you're not sort of missing that little bit.
Right. So then you would have to manually open up your password manager and go down to that particular entry, and then you can read that information and copy it from there. Being able to push in the password into a particular website is dependent upon that website. They may say, no, you can't do that. Some of them won't let me do a cut and paste. I have to actually type each individual character into the username and password. That's for security. It makes it harder for the bad guys to do that. I haven't seen it for a long time, but they used to have what was called as a pop-up keyboard. So a keyboard that would show up on your screen, you had to use your mouse to click on to type in all of that information, which again was difficult for the bad guys that were trying to just crash in the account by saying, here's a username, here's the password, here's your username, here's the password. They can't do that. They would have to have your screen basically open where they can see that pop-up keyboard and type the information in. But again, there's all kinds of ways and there's all kinds of things. I see where they have talked recently about using your pattern, the way you type in on the computer, the amount of time that you take to go from character to character to get to those, and use that as a recognition. Facial recognition, fingerprint recognition, those are becoming more available. Also, there's pluses and minuses to all of those. On my phone, I have a fingerprint manager, and that seems to work very well on there. And they all try to come up with a new way to say, this is how we're going to now protect your account. And as with LastPass, as I mentioned, just like anybody else, once you get into an accident in a car, when I was making a left turn, let's say, you're much extra careful when you make left turns because you don't want that to happen again. And that's what all the companies do. They say, okay, we got burnt over here. We're sorry. Let us see if we can't do this better in a little different way.
One other thing I was going to ask about, As far as two-factor authentication, I've heard of these like little USB keys or dongles that you can put in.
Yep.
And that's now then, do some places require that, or is that
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Some places require it, and there's a couple different types of them. I had one long time ago from PayPal. That was a little dongle. And when I went to log in on PayPal, I would have to push that, and it came up with a number, like an 8-10 digit number. And I had to type that on there. So in that little dongle, it had a number generator for me. So it had a list of maybe 10,000 numbers that are associated to me. And then when I would type in that number, PayPal would say, well, let's check for Ross and see if that particular number is associated to his account, and go on. There are USB or dongles that are that require, you have to have that there, that token, for it to be able to find that, to say, yep, I see that you have that. That can be on your identity card that you have for getting into the office. It can be a physical key. There's all kinds of iterations and pluses and minuses to all of those. But as far as saying there's a universal one, there isn't. That's just the authenticator on the phone seems to be more where people are going than to anything else.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate the idea that you need to go and, if you've had an account for a long time, check to make sure where the alternate email and the alternate phone number are, because if they're out of date, that's where they're going to send the authentication code. And if you don't have it, they assume that ain't you.
Yeah, I get that from people when I say, they say, well, I have the right password. I know what it is. I type it in, and the company tells me it's wrong. Well, you need to be able to reset it, and we forget, and we're typing something in the wrong case. But yeah, the people will tell me that they locked me out. They changed my password. No, they don't do that. They may come up and say, okay, now you had a 10-digit password and now it needs to be 15, and you're supposed to go through those steps to change that. And if you ignore that, then yeah, you can get locked out and have to go through that particular organization, that particular web page's provisions to get you back in. Or sometimes they won't let you do it. You have to abandon that account, say with an email address, say, I have to give up on that email address and get a new one.
Marty?
Okay, I just want to know how you feel about having the written password. They always say you can't have it in writing, and it's like, forget it. I've got mine in writing.
Well, again, I've been doing this for a long time, and I asked the people for their password lists, and at one time they printed it out. And now they have it, and well, they've crossed it out, and there's an arrow to the bottom of the page, then to the back of the page, and on to page 2. I really like a password managing program that lets you print out that list, where it's not something that you have to write. Because again, the biggest problem to me with writing them down is we don't do it. I'll remember that one. I remember that I changed my password for my email account or for wherever, and we forget. And you have to go through that procedure to try to get them to unlock your account. I hesitate to say it, but a better way for a written, if you really want to say, I want to write it out, is that you have an address book that it has a page for every account. So instead of where it says street address and telephone number, you can use all of those for the security questions, and you draw a line through the password that you have just turned off, and you type your new password in there and put a date next to it. But again, that's so much dependent upon you doing it. And people will tell me, I know I do this all the time and I don't have a problem, but today, please use a password manager.
Alice?
This kind of leads into that. Ross, could you go through the steps real quickly, or maybe I can do it later, how to print the last passed list? I did it some time ago, but I know I need to do it again.
I've done it, and to say this is the biggest thing that to do with that is you have to log on to your online account to do it. You can't do it from the LastPass program on your local computer. And that's how I would do it. And what my goal is for within the next week to start changing all of my passwords that I have in there to using ones that now were generated by LastPass, starting with
Now-
the financial institutions first. Excuse me.
I'm
Go
sorry, I
ahead.
was just gonna say, what do you mean go into online? In other words, if I go on my desktop and I go into LastPass, it's not in there somewhere?
No, you have to go to lastpass.com.
Oh,
and sign
okay.
in with your email address and your password
Oh,
and
okay.
in there. And I would Google for it. How do I print out my
Got it.
LastPass
Yeah.
list?
Okay,
And they will
great.
say, click here, click here, click here, and do that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Bella,
Yes, I have same question about LastPass. I'm using LastPass, but I don't know because someone tell me how to use this, so I started using. And I noticed if I go to a website, there's a LastPass on top, right side corner. There's a LastPass, and I just wondering, is that the change if I log into their website, or this LastPass password stay the same?
So the LastPass password for your master account does not change. It is an email address that you used, and you provided them with a password when you signed up for that account. And that is what's used to open up your vault on your local computer. And also then you can open up the vault at LastPass. But that's the same email address and password that account uses. Now, the way we're supposed to use LastPass is that you install LastPass, the add-on, to each browser that you use. So if you say I'm using Chrome most of the time, you have it in Chrome. Now you find a web page that doesn't work. You go over to Edge. Edge doesn't have that LastPass program installed. You have to install LastPass into Edge, and then you will have that LastPass sign in.
Oh,
Okay.
so
And then,
each individual browser you need to.
yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Yes, and it's called an extension, and you have to get the extension. And again, you can Google for, or if you sign into LastPass and say, how do I add an extension for Safari? How do I add an extension for Firefox? And they will say, this is the way you do that. And then you have it in there. Now,
Oh.
what you're really supposed to do also is that LastPass doesn't automatically log in. You have to provide a password for them to unlock that account. Because people say, well, what happens if my computer gets broken into, or I have someone sit down at my computer? I don't want them to have access to all that information. So just like on the computer where it times out and goes to a lock screen, I believe you can set up LastPass to say after 28 minutes, let's say, it locks, and you have to provide that password again. Same way when you close all your browsers at night, it closes LastPass as one of the options. So the next day when you go in to use LastPass, it will say, okay, give us your username and password, and then it will let you unlock that LastPass vault for you to use. But again, at the end of the day, you should close all of the browsers so that LastPass is locked out. So if somebody sits at the computer, somehow breaks in, which I have not seen really forever. If someone's sitting, people ask me, say, can't somebody break into my computer if I leave it on overnight? Theoretically, yes. I haven't seen it. More times than not is what happens is when somebody calls and says, oh, this is a virus, or we're Microsoft and we're going to help you get into it. And you go to a website and you provide them access to your computer. That's not somebody breaking into it. That's you providing that information to them.
Okay.
But,
I noticed that the left side top corner, there's manage your LastPass. and you can print out the whole list of the
Okay.
LastPass.
Okay. In the past, so maybe that's what the way you can do it now. I know that every day they change the program, so I can say this is the way it used to work for me. And I know when I used LastPass, I had to go in and to the website and print it out. But if it lets you do it there, wonderful. But again, you should put that onto each browser that you use. That way, when you have to change from one browser to the other, I don't tell people always use this brand browser or never use that brand browser, because they all have their pluses and minuses. So
Okay. Thank
just
you,
pay
Russ.
attention for that. All right. Mr. Dan.
Yes. You were talking about special characters in your password.
Yes.
I just wanted to make people aware that if they're traveling, they may have a keyboard that doesn't have those special characters. So you have to be very careful of that if you're using someone else's computer and a different keyboard.
I understand what you're saying, and I where I've had more problems of that is trying to get to some of the special characters on an iPhone, that they kind of hide those, and it's hard to get to those special characters. But it's the same issue as you're speaking of. Those are all what are called ASCII characters, and in the character set that we have, there's 255 characters, and you can get to each one of those characters by holding the Alt key down, I think it is, and then typing in that number, and then that particular character. We only use about 30, 40, maybe 50 characters at all. But again, there's another 200 of them that are there available if you use the Alt key to get to it. And you could practice with that. And traveling is an issue. I know that when people have gone to China, to be able to get to their email, they had to use a VPN software that gets past the Chinese firewalls that say, no, you can't access that point. So, yep, travel is an issue.
Also, if you're using your phone, how do you get the Alt key?
Well, depends on your phone. And you tell me you don't want a smartphone, and I understand that. But then that's a limitation that you have put on yourself and say, I want to be able to do this, but that I can't because of that. Can't help you there, sir. Okay. Will.
Yeah, are you allowed to use the upper ASCII keys into a password?
So when they ask you for a special character, those are specifically the ones they're talking about, are the ones that are on the top of the keyboard above the numbers.
Yeah, I'm just asking, as you say, there are a huge number of additional ASCII keys and upper ASCII set. I didn't know that they allowed you to use those in a password, but anyway, my question is,
well, let me answer here, sir, before you go on. It all is how many characters, type of characters, length of characters, all that is dependent upon each website. I can't make a general statement that says you can always do this or never do that. It depends on that website. I'm just saying that's how you can get to those characters, and you can practice with that in, say, a word processor. You can say, if I want to get to this character, the book tells me, or what internet tells me, this is what I do. Hold the Alt key down, type in this character, and that one will show up. We used to use 5 null characters as a password on computers. You can't see what they are when you type it in. We don't do that anymore, but again, that's how we used to get to using a 5 nulls on a keyboard to log in on a server.
Yeah, okay. Well, there are like 75 characters, I think, on the keyboard you can use. But anyway, the probability of even, 4 characters being broken by brute force.
Will, could you get to your question, please?
Okay, let's stop right there, because you've mentioned that before, sir, and you're extremely wrong. Extremely wrong. You need to have whatever the characters are that this company says you need to have. And they're not just doing it to make it difficult on you, sir. They're doing it because what they have seen. So if they're telling you you have to have 12 characters and you say, really, I only want to use 4 because I think that's safe, you're not doing things that are thinking it through, sir. You need to have the full length of the characters that are
That's
there.
not my point, Ross. My point is that the way your password essentially gets broken is someone breaks into some company that has all the passwords. A
No.
brute force essentially can't be done unless it's a naive password like password or your mother's name or something like that. But anything that has more than probably 4 characters in it probably cannot be broken by brute force. But
You're wrong.
I'm not saying
Will.
your password can't be broken.
You're wrong, Will. And if you would look up any information that talks about password length and with the number of combinations that they have to go to. Now, they are not using a person in front of a keyboard typing. They're using another computer that's generating those. So 4 characters is nothing to get into it. You're better off served by that particular, say, Bank of America that says after 15 tries, we're locking that account, so you can't continue. But to say that you can't break in on you can Google on there and show how you can get around the 4 or 5 digit code on a cell phone in about 3 minutes.
That's like 30 million tries.
Will, would you please get to your question? There's other people with their hands raised.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Pat,
Please look it up, Will.
Okay.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Maybe I missed it. Well, actually, no, I have 2 questions from somebody else's question. But the first question had to do with if you forget your LastPass main pass
You're
word.
done.
Okay. Oh, well, no, but can you go back into the website and create a new one?
No.
Oh, so you can't get into that website at all? Not the LastPass website, but say Bank of America website. You can't go into Bank of America and make another password?
Sure. If Bank of America lets you do that, and you have to call their number and you can say, this is my social number and this is the last deposit I made or something like that, and they can identify who you are. But if I heard your question right to begin with, if you lose your password for LastPass and you can't get in on your computer or on their website, you're done. That account is locked. You have to create a new account to enter your LastPass information into.
Okay. The second question is if you have to, so I'm, as I understand it, we're logging in. I don't have LastPass or any of that stuff. So, but if you were to get that you would have to be logging into, say, I got Safari now. So I'd have to log into Safari and then log into LastPass. And if I switch to Chrome, I'd have to log into Chrome and then log into LastPass. Are we doing all these logins?
Okay, so when you say log in into Safari or Chrome, that's just a click. There is no login. That's just a click and it opens up that particular program. Then if in your browsing program previously, you should have installed the extension for LastPass. So it is there. And if it's locked, then what you would have to do to be able to use the LastPass is unlock it with that username and password. And then it should unlock it for all of the browsers. You only have to do that once.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
David.
Actually, Fran has her hand up.
Oh, I do see it. I'm sorry. I do see it. Hardly there. Yes.
Okay, just a quick question. So I got my accounts and some of them go to Authenticator and some of them send a code to my phone.
Right.
And I had read somewhere recently that having a code sent to your phone is no longer safe. Do you know anything about that?
Yep.
Would you
Nothing
like
is safe.
explain
Nothing
it?
is 100%.
Well,
Nothing is 100%. You're asking me, and I'm telling you the answer. Nothing is 100%. Have there been compromises recently with third factor identification? Yes, but they are really pointed. They're not in general. So to say, I'm not going to use this third factor identification or the authenticator, you don't have an option usually for those websites that say this is what you have to use. They then provide to you saying, if you want to use our service, and I have about 12 that I have to go through. If I'm going to use their service, I have to use their authentication method to get in. It's not my choice as to which one I use.
So is there a differential between email versus to the phone and risk? Because sometimes they give you the option, we'll send you an email or we'll send you a code.
Well,
Does it matter?
yeah. Email is easier to break into. So
Okay.
as within all our business clients, we do not email passwords because there's too many chances within that physical office that someone has access to that other email account and then can find.
I'm saying for the second or third out, for the code, for
I
the,
understand what you're telling me. We do not, you're saying, is it safe to use email versus the authenticator? And I'm telling you, we don't use email for passwords because of that within an office. Now, if you say, Google gives you an option to say, I'm going to send you an email to this secondary, usually email address, or sometimes it's your primary email address. Yeah, you can do that. That's not as secure as using the authenticator.
okay, thanks.
David,
Yes, there was, in just listening to all the conversations, there's two more thoughts that came to my mind. Before people had a lot of password managers, the browsers would offer to save passwords.
Yep.
And a lot of people, including me, got really used to, they're saved in the browser. I can do that.
Yep.
The problem is, in some ways, if it's in Chrome, well, in essence, they're saved up at Google with your Google account, I believe.
Yes. Yes.
And so that's one way of doing it. It's just that they're not as secure on your computer, because then someone really could walk up to your computer and just get into something. And the other thing I wanted to say that occurred to me is that, and I've seen this both, I think, with LastPass and now with Bitwarden, which I'm looking at. When you sign up for that, you can usually designate a alternate person to get access in the case you are in hospital, or for your surviving spouse if you die, and these sorts of things. And that's another thing that's worth setting up.
Right. That's sometimes also just the alternate email address or alternate cell phone number to call, telephone number to get the contact. But I understand what you're saying, and yes, they can set it up that way. And having a survivor as such be able to access that information becomes more important. Your first question was, I had a comment on there and I've forgotten it.
My first question was saving passwords in the browser itself.
Yes. So with Chrome, you have to, and Edge, I don't know with Firefox, but you have to provide the password for the computer to be able to see that password.
Yes, generally that's true.
And is that more secure than LastPass? No, not to me, but it's another way to do it and to use that as a password manager. With Chrome, we use that in business quite a bit. And that way we have the person sign in with their business email address, using that for a Google account, and then synchronize all of their bookmarks up to Google Chrome. So when they have to sit on a new computer, all they have to do is go up to Chrome, sign in, and they're all back. And the password's the same way if they've chosen to save their passwords in Chrome.
Yeah, and
How do you do that?
Yeah, I just wanted to make people aware that is a way. Yeah, you don't have to buy anything. You don't have to install anything.
Right.
It's just not as secure. There's no two-factor authentication to go through. And if they're like me, when it says, log in with your password, I've got a 4-digit code that I can type. It's very quick. But because it's quick, it's not as secure.
Ms. Della.
About the password, many years ago, you don't need that many characters. Now the passwords getting longer and longer. And Ross mentioned need 15 characters.
15 is what's becoming more common being asked.
Yeah, being safe. I normally I try to make something that I can remember, but now it's so many passwords you
can't
have
do
to
it anymore.
remember. So I try to write it down all the passwords, but it's getting so complicated. I wonder if anyone knows there's good strategy to create a password easy to remember.
No, easy to remember. So yes, as such, a password manager. And I understand what you're saying. You're used to writing them down. And the flaw in that to me, and I've been guilty of the same thing, of saying, I'll remember this password and I'll put it in my book later. And you go back later and go, I don't remember where that is. And it all depends on how difficult it is to reset that password. If it's not too difficult to reset that, then okay, that's fine. You decided you're going to do it that way and that works. But if it's say, if you would use, say, LastPass and you don't have that password remembered somewhere on a computer and or a slip, and having a password list in the computer isn't really effective either. If that computer becomes disabled or lost or whatever, that information can be all locked up.
You said save in the computer. What does that mean?
So let's say you have an Excel sheet that you use to put passwords in. And I've seen people do that quite often. They put that on the top of they put that on their desktop and says passwords. So if somebody breaks into your computer, what file are they going to look at first?
Your name,
desktop, that's passwords.
Thanks.
Mr. Wakely. You're muted, Will.
Ross, you were talking about the Chrome password manager. If I don't have a PIN for my computer, I can't use that.
I believe you're going to have to type in a password. So now we're back to the Microsoft account and the options that they have for that to get logged in. Microsoft, when you create an account through a Microsoft account, you have a username, email address, and password. They offer you a PIN, 4-digit number that you can use on the computer. And that's one of the login options on the first page when you go to log in. They also have a facial recognition that they can use. Now, what you're saying is when we go into Chrome, once you have used one of those other identification methods, what does Chrome ask you?
For the
Does
PIN,
it
but
ask
if
for
you
the
don't
PIN?
have a PIN, you said you can set it up so you don't need a PIN. Is that correct?
If you set it up as a local account and you do not choose the authentication method of PIN also, you always have a username and password on there. So to say, and behind that, you can say, okay, I want to make it easy for my computer is what Microsoft's tried to help. And you use a PIN number. So you don't have to remember the 12-character password that you created. You can type in the 4 digits and then you're in on your computer. Now, the question you were asking me, I believe, is to say, now, when I go to Chrome and I say, reveal the password for me, can I use the PIN there or do I have to type in the password?
No, I'm asking if you don't have a PIN, can you get into that password manager?
So what do you need? So again, we're back to the question in Chrome. What do you have to type in so you can reveal that password?
A PIN, but if you don't have a PIN, can
Okay,
you get
didn't
into it?
let me finish, sir. When you go into Chrome and you say, remember the items that you have remembered, and you says it has a click box in it to reveal the password. I've only seen it ask you for a password for your computer. I have not seen it ever ask for a PIN.
That is, I call a PIN the password for the computer.
Then that's not correct. PIN is a 4-digit number, just like you have to use your credit card, or again, get into your Windows computer. One of the options to log in on the computer is to type in a PIN, and it will
Correct.
say that right on the login screen.
Right.
PIN.
Yes. And when I go to password manager in Chrome, it asks me for that PIN to reveal the
Okay.
password.
Okay, so then they have linked it in there, and that's fine.
But I'm saying
there's
if
a
I
lot of-
don't have a PIN, there's no way
you
I can
won't
get
use-
into that password manager.
No, it shouldn't ask you for that to allow you to get in on that account, because that's not an option that you have created in your computer. So that you haven't turned on PIN in the same way it's not asking you for a facial recognition. It's whatever you use to log in on the computer. And if you haven't set up PIN, Chrome's not going to ask you for a PIN.
What will it ask me for, a password?
It will ask you for the password that you use to log in on the computer.
Okay, thank you.
Start your computer every morning, Will. What do you do to start it? What do you have to put in?
A PIN, PIN.
Okay,
A 4-digit PIN.
A 4-digit PIN, yes.
And that's what
Okay,
it should
then
ask you
and when
for.
you go to, and when you're going to Chrome and it's asking you for a PIN, that would be the same PIN number that you use to log in. It's not a Google PIN. That's a authentication within your computer. They're making sure that you're an authenticated user on this computer.
I thought you said that you do not have to have a PIN necessarily to start a computer.
You do not, but it depends on what you chose when you set the computer up.
Yes.
One of the
I
Microsoft
don't
will
want to belabor
give
the
you,
point,
if
but-
you use them, I'm sorry.
I said, I don't want to belabor the point. It's taking a lot of time.
Well,
So I think I understand.
Okay, if you don't want to use a PIN on your computer, which I don't recommend that you do, I recommend that you have a local account which has a username and password, not an email address. If you're using an email address to log in on the computer and that's your Microsoft account, you're giving away your information to Microsoft and says,
Yeah.
Will just signed in here. Here's his email address. And we can associate that information that comes off that computer directly back to you. So I would recommend that you have a local account that is not set up through Microsoft. That way it's much easier to reset the password also. Mr. Stan.
Just to carry on that same, I just want to clarify that a PIN is numerals only and always 4. Passwords contain all sorts of characters and can be any number. And I think some of the discussion has been some confusion between passwords and PINs. I do not consider the password that I use to sign into my computer a PIN. The PIN is quite different. But the reason I raised my hand, am I correct in that assumption, Ross?
Well, a PIN is usually 4 characters, but I do believe there's an option I saw in there that you can set that to have characters also. So you could have numbers and characters if you choose that. In default, I agree with you, it's numbers.
Okay, thank you. Now, getting back to my point, I am the counter opinion to Ross about spreadsheets.
Yep.
And I think a spreadsheet is better than a scrap of paper or writing it down in a secretary notebook. I've been doing it for years. I have passwords for different areas of interest, walkabout, senior computer group, other groups, and I can keep it in a spreadsheet. I do not label it passwords. And I probably should change the first page, and it is protected. I keep it on an external drive that's always connected, but it is still an external drive. And I keep it on a thumb drive that I carry with my keys. I'm not yet convinced to use a password manager because of the variety of computers that I worked on in one thing or another. So if anybody wants to talk about my version of password management, they're welcome to contact me. Thank you.
You have mentioned that, and having it so that it's not, say, on your desktop is a much better thing. I've seen that in the past. We've discussed that, and you've said, this is how I do that. I keep that on an external drive. What we used to do is we would have a longer piece of something that would go around our neck with the memory key stick to it. And you try to remember that you take that key with you, just like you put it onto your car keys, that memory, that stick. So you never left it in a computer. Because for me, I would be in maybe 10 offices a day. And if I left that somewhere, I'm in trouble. So you put it on your key ring and then you take it with you, and it's no longer in that computer unless you're there in front of it. There are ways, to make things more or less safe. In general, most people, I would recommend that you have a password manager account online, because if for some reason that memory key that you have, you do have more than one copy of it, one on an external drive and one then on your memory stick, sir?
Yes, I do.
Okay, well, so you have a backup that way. You have a second location. If you only had one, that's not a good thing.
Thank you.
Joan.
Yes, just 2 points of information. Number one, I'm using a computer that was set up by someone else. And for me, when the computer comes on, I have to insert an 8-digit number for a PIN. Now, like I said, that was set up by someone else, so I have no idea why, but that's the only way that I can start the computer. The second thing is, I was hit with the 2-factor because when I went to San Diego from Canada, I was unable to use my Canadian cell phone. And because of that, I was locked out of Facebook until I got back to Canada, no matter how hard I tried.
Okay, so when you say it's an 8-character, what is the username and email address?
When I turn on the computer,
yes,
it comes up and it says welcome, and it says PIN, and I put in the PIN and it starts.
But above that, it should have a username.
Nope, not to start the computer.
Okay, I'm surprised about that. But again, I would have you look at the documentation that I had that talks about getting off of turning off the Microsoft account and making sure that you're logged in with a local account. Because you need to have that capability. You can also, if you make another account on the computer, you can make one with your name or whatever name you choose, make that a local administrator, and that's a couple steps, I understand. Then you can copy everything over from, say, your desktop that you normally log in onto your new user desktop, and then you set up whatever password requirements that you want to have on that. When you say PIN, that generally refers to me that you're using a Microsoft account, and that's not something I would recommend.
Like I said, it was someone else's computer, and they set it up this way.
I understand, but you can change.
I can't do anything until I insert the PIN, because nothing will come on.
Sure. So once you're in on that computer with that PIN, I'm assuming that you're an administrator on that computer.
Not necessarily.
Well, then you can't install or change things on the computer, because you're not allowed to do that, because you're not a local administrator on that computer.
That is true.
So then you're done. Okay, and you'd have to get back in touch with that person that you helped set you up so that they could get in as an administrator on the computer. most of the time, most people, when you sign up and set up a computer, the user that you set up on the computer is a local administrator for that computer. They can make any changes that they want on that computer. So for the ones like I set up in the office, we may have a user that we don't want to have those capabilities, and we create a user account for that person, but we don't make them a local administrator. We make them a standard user. And then they can use the computer and do what they need to. If they need to install or make a change to an application, they have to contact an administrator. Then we sign back in as an administrator on that computer and then give them that capability.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that I've seen this on several people's computers where they, if it comes up, if you don't really give a name, it's called owner, and then there's a password in that. I was just thinking that if she needed to do administrator things and there's no administrator around, could she boot into safe mode and set up things that way?
No. Because when you boot into safe mode, it's going to ask you for that username for an administrator to get into, say, the command prompt. But we go into the command prompt, and that's where you can make all those changes. Now, a way around that is that you make a memory stick with that version of Windows. So if it's 10 or 11, then you make a memory stick for that. You boot to that memory stick, then you can go in. And it says, okay, you want to set up a new computer? Say, no, I'm going to go down and do a repair. And then when you do repair, it lets you get to the safe mode of that computer and the command prompt. And then you can do net user and change the username, password, add a user, whatever you need to do on there. But there's a number of steps. I didn't mention here, but all of these things, I did mention that there's all the things that you do through the safe mode. That's can be very complicated. And I gave you the steps to do that. But if you get into trouble on there or have questions, please get in touch with me. And I can say, this is what you want to do, or you don't want to do that because it is very complicated. And when you're going to get into something that say into the safe mode command prompt, you're almost to the point to say, I really should just reformat and reinstall because I'm so deep with having a problem. The computer won't start, or I need to change the password for everything. You have a backup and we restore from that. That saves a lot of time. You can futz and spend hours trying to fix a computer, where it does not take that long to really reinstall Windows and then recover usually from a backup. Mr. Dan.
Yes, Stan just made a statement that the PIN number is always a 4-digit number, and that I don't think that's correct. I was somewhere the other day trying to sign in, and I needed a 6-digit PIN number. So
I think he was speaking about for Windows, and I think that's more limited on there. I'm just trying to look up what the requirements are here for Microsoft. But a PIN number is used for your credit card and in lots of different places for identification. And that's all dependent upon that particular organization. As I'm looking here, it's not telling me. It just says you click on Start and Settings and Accounts and Sign In options, and it says PIN at Hello, Windows Hello. Change the PIN with the instructions that you have there. And it's not telling me how many characters or what the requirements are. But I do remember seeing something recently. I thought that you could enable letters into that sign in. And the way you do it on a cell phone is you have to, so if it's an A, then you would type a number 1. If it's a B, then you click the 1 twice, and that then moves it over to the second character in the 1 of a B. But that will show up on your screen as you're doing it. But again, that's all dependent upon whatever website you're setting that PIN number up for.
And the second thing I had is you talked about a pop-up keyboard.
Yep.
And I signed on to a site which was very difficult. It's Treasury Direct. And Treasury Direct does have a pop-up keyboard to verify your identity.
Yep. Yeah, and in Windows 7, we had a pop-up keyboard that you can enable and come up. It's a feature built into Windows. but then the websites also would have their own that they would push down on you when you're trying to sign in on their website.
Yes, that's so someone using a key tracker, they cannot find out what you typed in.
That's right.
That's all I had.
That's it? Okay. Anybody else?
No, one other thing. Yesterday's newspaper, there was an article on cybersecurity strategy stresses software safety, which brings up a lot of interesting things about who is responsible for the security, whether it's a software company or the operator or someone else. So, and if the government gets involved, then we're really in trouble.
It used to be, and I haven't looked at them in a long time, many years ago, even the software that came from Microsoft, the only thing they would guarantee is that media was readable. They would not make any guarantees that says that Excel will work, Word will work, or won't have any problems. The only thing that they would say is that the media that you got that program on is readable. That was it.
Well, they're not talking about the media, they're talking about security at this point.
But you're talking about who's responsible for.
Yes.
Again, Microsoft is saying we're not responsible for anything other than to make sure that you can read the information. Other than that, you're on your own.
It says White House looks to push liability onto software companies.
I understand. I'm still waiting for the government to come in and say the gasoline companies are charging us too much money.
Yeah, then we won't have any gasoline.
Well, I understand, but I mean, to say I'm going to wait for the government to come back and be able to force responsibility back onto all of the software companies to solve whatever there are with their software, I'm not holding my breath.
Well, that was an interesting article in today's paper that said, what did it say? Two members of Congress have sounded the alarm over the dangers of artificial intelligence. It says, but even as lawmakers put a spotlight on the technology, few are taking action.
Yeah.
The problem is most of the lawmakers do not even know what AI is.
Yes. So the only thing I comment on that is say with a self-driving car, whose ever's phone is.
It's Dan. He's in a room with other people.
Right, and he's got it turned off now, which is wonderful. Would I rather have everybody have a self-driving car around me or have the other people around me be able to drive the cars the way they do or don't? I'm kind of the opinion I would rather trust the computer to navigate and have the computers talking to each other than having the people around me driving their cars, which is really scary. Well, I think that's it's back to Will then.
For Q&A on subjects other than passwords. Any hands? Nobody had any problems?
No problems this week at all?
Nobody had any questions?
There's Stan got one.
I misplaced my billfold and I went back to the walkabout office and ran around in a circle. Anyway, I'm thinking of getting one of those dongle, or they call them tiles, keychain attached tiles that are small enough to slip into a billfold or put on your keychain. Does anybody have any comments about recommendations? they don't seem to, you have to be within 300 feet of them for them to work. And I'm wondering if it's worth it doing the find it anywhere, it's within a 300 feet of anybody with the more internet-based things. Anyway, I'd like to hear a little bit of discussion on that.
So I've been using the tile for many, many years, and they work very well. You can get them in all kinds of different formats. Waterproof, ones that goes on your key rings, ones that you have an attach, a double-sided adhesive on it so that you can attach it to something, or ones that you want to put in your billfold. Yes, that will work fine. And mine has never failed me to say, where is this? And it will find, so let's say if I go to Escondido and I leave my tile protected device in Escondido, then it will show me, even where I'm back anywhere else, where the last time that reported in. And it can chain to other people in the area's tile. So it can find it even though you may not be in that physical area anymore.
Now that's Android, not Apple.
No, Apple will, I think you can use tile with Apple.
Well,
It's just
what-
whether it depends on the app.
I have Android. I thought that was, okay, that's available for both.
Right. Right. And
Okay.
they're about $25. The downside with them to begin with was that you could not change the battery. Now they have ones that you can change the battery. I'm wondering if the ones that are very thin you would be able to change the battery or not. So you would have to, on a year to year and a half basis, buy a new one because the battery itself has gone south.
What is the key word to the feature?